Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Book Talk. I'm Brady.
I'm Elijah.
And I'm Ian.
And in today's episode, we're going to go over one poem in class that really left a lasting impression on us and that we really felt deeply. We're also going to go over one book in class that also left a lasting impression on us, but we'll save that for later on in the podcast. I'll go ahead and get us started off. I'm going to bring to you guys a poem called Grit, written by L.E. Bowman. Since it's a short poem, I'll go ahead and read it out for all the viewers out there. It says, if you want to see true grit, watch someone break. Then watch as the pieces settle, as hands begin moving, as a new person is made. So I really like that poem because, as I mentioned last episode, we're all baseball players here at Judson. And I feel like this poem itself kind of relates to our athletic background. What do you guys think?
I mean, definitely, especially the fact that we play baseball, they'd say that baseball is like a game of failure. So, obviously, playing it for so many years, we've experienced so much failure. And, the obvious title of the poem is True Grit, So, to me, in order to be a baseball player, you need to have grit in order to be successful. So,
Yeah.
I think it fits very well with us.
Yeah, I would also agree with that. I think you got to have grit to play any kind of sport, especially in a college team. You got to be having that willingness to get up every day knowing you might fail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
but even in life in general, you need grit in anything.
Yeah.
Not just waking up for practice in the morning or whatever. It's like waking up for work or just really doing anything in life. You just need grit in general in order to have the success that you really want. In order to strive for things that you really want to achieve in life. So.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of funny because the word grit and gritty is kind of something that we kind of joked around with and always brought up in practice and hanging out with the guys all the way back to the fall. Do you guys remember that?
Oh yeah.
Just kind of whenever anything gets tough, instead of just falling, we would always kind of just mention, just be gritty.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we even had a saying in one of our Bible studies, where stay present and stay in the moment was briefly brought up.
Yeah.
I remember distinctly whenever someone struck out or failed in their opportunity, it was always repeated, maybe as a joke at the time, but stay present. So to me, that's kind of the grit that I think of during the season.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. And I think obviously grit's a huge part of athletics, but I do think it also plays a huge role even just in your everyday life, whether you're an athlete or not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that can really help get you through life.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think?
I would agree with that, especially if you got a hard office job that you're working 20-hour days, 12-hour days, 8-hour days. I think it takes a lot of motivation to want to get up every day and go do that and just go be able to provide for your family.
Yeah. I mean, as I've already said, it can literally be in any type of task, even not just getting up out of your bed, taking that shower that morning or, just literally anything in general,
Yeah, it's
I mean, it sounds cliche, it sounds stupid, but
there's really more to it than people realize.
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's just so subtle. I feel like the word grit is just
Powerful.
Yeah.
Well, John, at that, why don't you go ahead and get into your poem that you picked out?
Yeah, so, I mean, my poem is, obviously, I think probably class favorite, is The Red Wheelbarrow.
Why don't you read it out, Freddie? I'll listen.
Yeah, of course. So, it's written by William Carlos Williams. Love the name. So it goes, so much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. So, obviously, it does not sound like a poem, which to me, that's my favorite part.
But as Professor Robert said, it is a poem.
Yeah, so that's exactly the reason why it is my favorite poem, because it kind of challenged me to another perspective of poetry. Because when I think of poetry, I'm not necessarily the reader or the heavily book-oriented person. But when I, naturally think of poetry, I always think of, there's got to be rhymes at the end, the A, B, type pattern. It's got to have, some type of just pattern throughout of the poetry. So when I read this, obviously, it made no sense to me, but you know, the part that like kind of I like the most underratedly is how short the poem is. You know, how I already mentioned about
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, I'm not the biggest book reader, but
So yeah, I'll go ahead and build off that for you because I agree. I also did pick a short poem myself, but the biggest thing about a short poem is that it's nice to kind of see a story with such low words.
yeah.
But I'll admit that the first time I read this, and even the second time I read this, I didn't see it at all. And it was kind of one of those where I almost hated it.
I mean,
But this was one of the poems in class where we read it. I want to say it was either 2 or 3 times. I want to say it was 3 times.
several times because
Yeah.
the length of it's pretty short.
Yeah, I want to say
it was very easy.
Dr. Roberts had us read it multiple times to try and really understand it. I think finally by that 3rd or 4th time, whatever it was, you kind of started to finally get the story behind it and kind of draw that image in your brain of what it's really telling you.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, like it's just describing a setting to me, but it's more so like describing how you said the image, and you know, it's more of like it's like a deeper thought. You know, kind of puts you in that spot.
It's like a sliding glass door.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It really is. And I think
Exactly.
it's really impressive how you can get that sliding glass door
From such a
short story. Yeah, it's really powerful. Well, with that, Ian, why don't you go ahead and get into your poem?
So my poem, I picked Bridge Builder by, hold on, let me look at her name. His name is Will Dramgul. And this story was about an old man who crosses a river, I want to say. And the basis of the story is that a little kid's following him, and he's trying to be like setting an example for this little boy that who in the future is going to do his job per se, or just like any job like that could like relate to a actual normal life. And it's just about the importance of making paths easier for those who come after us and like showing them the way, and like having a mentor there to like lead somebody.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good poem. I thought it was pretty powerful. It was obviously a much longer poem, but I think in the end, I don't know if you remember, it kind of hit a little bit of a plot twist on us at the end.
Yeah, because the man disappears.
Yeah. What did you think of the ending itself?
I think it was a metaphor for saying like it was his time to go, and he's like done everything that he can. And I think that he knew that the little boy was like ready to do this on his own and like ready to take over, and he didn't need someone like looking after him for all this time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think it almost symbolizes kind of strength and then a family. I think that story really kind of dives into our core values and really gets some of those community and human flourishing kind of core values that correlate directly to kind of human flourishing. I'm looking at it now. I mean, I think loyalty, obviously, faith. He had a lot of faith in the young one, and then if you go on, I think that story really connects to that core values a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, a question that I kind of think of is like, do you guys think that the bridge, kind of like acts as like a metaphor for like relationships?
Relationships or like a task or like a future
anything.
job.
Yeah.
It could really be anything depending on the way you look at it. I feel like that story has a lot of like openings that you could like relate it to.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very powerful message that kind of is deeper than you really realize by reading the.
I mean, to me that it kind of sounds very similar to the Red Wheelbarrow. Like, it's just something so like ordinary, like a red wheelbarrow and a bridge. Like how much you can really get out of the deeper meaning of it. Like, it's just, to us it's just like everyday objects. But like if you go down into like an English, book perspective or whatever you want to call it, you get so much more out of like the purpose of it, which is just to me like kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah, I would even say like obviously we can build off the story itself, but the word bridge building is almost like a giant metaphor, and I would even challenge you guys to say, who do you think are like the bridge builders in your lives? Who kind of helps?
I would say like
make that bridge into who you are now.
I would say like any of my coaches like helping me to get to where I am in like a college sport now. Like my parents like for like raising me, like showing me right from wrong. My family members like cousins, aunts, like my brother. I think those are all like huge roles in my life.
Yeah, personally, when I hear like the bridge building kind of metaphor, I would think like my family who kind of shaped me the person I am today. But that's really cool. You mentioned coaches too, like that helped shape you into the athlete you are today.
For sure.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like easy answer is family for me as well.
Yeah,
you know, I mean,
absolutely.
they're there with you since like literally day one. So, you know, they're with you with your ups and your downs. So, to me, I would for sure say family.
No, that's a great point. Now let's go ahead and dive into what I mentioned at the start, that book that we wanted to dive into. Let's talk about The Outsiders. I know, Elijah, you're a big fan of The Outsiders. Why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so The Outsiders is obviously it's set in the 1960s, I want to say.
I believe so, yeah.
Sounds about right.
Okay,
We can tell you for sure.
1960s. I don't know why. To me, I always get mixed up with the 70s and 60s, but it's 1960s. And Outsiders to me is a very great book because it's between the relationships of two different parties. Obviously, there's the Sox and then there's the Greasers, which are my favorite because they have excellent hair. But
much like you, Elijah.
yes, exactly. That's exactly why. But so to me, like it's all about like these two groups have like kind of like similarities in a way.
Yeah.
Within their group. However, they see each other in such like, you know,
disgust,
yeah,
like
like
everything.
a different perspective.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I can't get along with this person.
No,
Because they're a little
let me-
different.
Yeah, because
Let me-
they're different from each other.
Let me
so.
dive in real quick. I would almost explain the Greasers versus the Sox as like a divided community.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So like, because you got the Sox, you know, they're more wealthy. They kind of drive, you know, fancier cars around for transportation, you know. And then you got the Greasers, who are like the more
They gotta work
like,
for everything.
yeah, like they're
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know they're like the more rascal type look, you know, obviously with the you know, slick back hair, you know, they got their jackets and jeans and all that. So to me, it's cool to see how I said like the differences apart from them. However, they're so like similar, yet they don't even know it. And then another aspect that I liked the most was, you know, how it was narrated by Ponyboy. And like he's
Big fan of Ponyboy.
yeah. And the reason why I like Ponyboy so much is because obviously he's part of the Greasers, which, you know, they're known to like portray such a mean and like strong like type of look within like their setting, but you know, throughout the story, like you really realize like how sensitive Ponyboy like sees things throughout life. You know.
Yeah, he's different from the rest of them. For
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. Like he's got a soft spot in his heart.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So-
And I think that's a lot like what we mentioned in our first episode. We tied it all the way back to Othello, where he plays kind of this certain role of somebody,
Yeah,
kind of portrays
exactly.
as somebody, but on the other side, really, he does have a soft
Exactly,
spot, or he
yeah.
may really deep down be somebody other than
Mhm.
who he kind of portrays to be. Now I got a question for you guys. I know my answer, but
Yeah.
do you guys think community is really based on status, or do you think it's based off of like how you personally kind of imagine community to be? Like, do you think the Sox are a community just because they're rich and have all this fancy stuff, or do you think the Greasers are a community just because they get along well?
I think they can both be counted as communities in their own way. Like the Sox, for sure. Like they're all rich, like friends. Like they like have to hang out because like all their families are friends, whatever. And then the Greasers, like they like all come together. Like they all have to work together to like find things they want, do things they want. It's kind of like two different kinds of communities, I want to say. What do you got to say, Ja?
I mean, I feel like I gotta go off Ian. Like I truly see like they're obviously two separate groups, but you know it. Like I kind of have. I'm sorry. I gotta go back to the communication thing because if they have a little more communication with each other, I feel like they could get along so well. You know, like so unexpectedly. That's just me because like I'm more of an open person. You know, I kind of get along with pretty much everyone I know. So just knowing me, I feel like just the more communication or like the more like getting to know each other.
Yeah.
Would kind of probably strengthen up the relationship between them.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. No, I think what Ian said was just absolutely perfect. I think through the story we see that they both get along really well in their community. Obviously not with each other, but the fact that they get along well, and I guess I said my answer right there. But
Yeah.
the fact that they can all get along, be so close, have trust in each other, all the different things that we've mentioned throughout these podcasts shows that they truly are a community,
Yeah.
and that they have the different core values that it takes to really make a community. But
Mhm.
yeah, overall, I think it's not about the status that'll make you a community. It's more so about what brings you together and what you kind of
Mhm.
strive yourselves all about.
So then I have a question for you guys. Do you think two groups that are such like different, like they can both flourish in their own ways, or do you think like
Yeah.
they all have common like tendencies in their flourishing?
Yeah, I see where you're going with that. I think they absolutely can both flourish, but I do think there's also certain tendencies or traits, I guess,
Yeah.
that do belong in communities, but they can also flourish in their separate ways.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the easy tendency to answer this question is, protecting their own.
Yeah.
Because, like, both sides obviously, mess with each other or, like, whatever.
Yeah.
But, both sides are very, protective within their own group. And that, to me, is, like, the biggest similarity that I see within both groups of the Sox and then the Greasers. So. And also to mention, it's such a great movie. If you guys,
I was just about to say, you guys are gonna make me want to rewatch the movie.
I don't know if you guys seen it, but it's such a great movie.
All right, well, I'm gonna go rewatch the Outsiders movie, but that's gonna do it for today's episode. We'll meet you back tomorrow, talking more about our core values specifically and how they relate to community and human flourishing. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon. Bye.